welcome back to the 39 Days podcast with Alex and Andrew. I'm Alex. That's Andrew.
What's going on, everyone?
And today we were talking about episode 3 of Survivor 42, which had arguably, I would say, one of the craziest, most unpredictable tribals we've ever seen. I think that's
For
pretty
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to talk about this episode, most of our attention tonight is going to be on the Wacky and Wild Tribal Council. What was said, what happened, how the person who got voted out. It really was one of those iconic moments that we haven't had in a while. You think back to people playing idols and then idol nullifiers, or people stealing a vote and that being the difference. We've kind of gotten a lot of like garden variety eliminations the past year or so. And this was awesome. This was totally
We've seen in the last, few seasons or so, there's been a lot of eliminations that almost seemed like they were kind of forced, especially last season. Like, one thing that I think of is the challenge last season with Deshaun, like first person who loses has to do the challenge where they have to pick the box to stay in the game or whatever it was.
Yeah.
To me, something like that seems so forced, where this was straight up two alliances that couldn't agree, and they basically went to war.
And it was brought on the fact that you have 6 people at Tribal Council, and only 4 of them could vote.
Yeah.
I can't recall a time where multiple people haven't had their vote. Now, it seems to become a recurring trend now with at least one person at Tribal can't vote because of the Beware advantage, because of whatever else happened.
Yeah.
But
that wasn't
happen to multiple people
here.
At once. Yeah.
That was not the only factor here, and we'll get into that because that is. I got opinions on that. But let's start off just by going over when Orange Tribe go. Taku, Vati, Ika, I think it's Taku. They get back from Tribal, and for some reason, we talk about this every single episode. For some reason, people continue to tell everyone about their advantages. And this was no different.
It makes no sense. Why are they doing this? Why?
They got back after voting out Mariah, and Marianne proceeded to tell Jonathan, Omar, and Lindsay about her extra vote,
which she had just gotten like an hour before.
Exactly.
Remember, we knew she got it.
Tribal.
Right. We knew she got it way earlier in last week's episode, but it wasn't actually sitting there waiting for her until she went up to vote. So within an hour or two, she couldn't hold it in any longer.
I really do like. I don't love the idea of basically having the ship wheel thing every week and giving everyone an advantage, but I really like the twist of that where they don't find out until they vote at Tribal. Yeah. I think that kind of nerves it.
If I'm recalling correctly, in 41 when they did it for like 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and then it kind of just went away.
Yeah.
So maybe it is just setting up some advantages to be used later in the game now. But
which I have no problem with.
But I don't want it to be like an Exile Island type thing where like at every immunity challenge, it's like, well, the losing tribe has to send someone, or the winning tribe gets to pick 2 people to go, or whatnot.
Because there's a difference between Exile Island, which was just literally Exile Island with the chance of maybe finding an idol, but if someone already found it, you're SOL. Then this, where you basically have a 50-50 shot of getting it advantage.
The only difference about this, obviously, in something like Exile, you're alone, you don't have any supplies. It's basically like the Edge of Extinction, but for one night. Maybe they gave you some rice or something, I don't remember. But here, you're at least given the opportunity to talk to someone, make a relationship on a tribe that you haven't actually been on, with people you haven't lived with. So I do like that aspect, but the fact that they have to keep pumping in the risk your vote or protect your vote type thing, like if they do it 3 or 4 weeks in a row, it will kind of water things down. Yeah. And maybe they do want people to lose their vote a bunch. Like, it's certainly impacted this week's Tribal, and I get that, but I just don't want it to be abused.
Yeah. So one comparison that I thought of when you just brought that up, how they just keep on doing it, is how in Ghost Island they would basically have someone go to Ghost Island every week, but there would only be certain weeks that there'd be a challenge. They'd crack open one of those little urns and say like, no challenge this week, which on one hand was cheap for the people that were there, but on the other hand, I think it limited the amount of advantages that were put into the game, and that's kind of something they should probably go back to if they're going to keep doing it like this.
Right. And the whole premise, though, of Ghost Island was like mistakes have been made by previous players of this game on previous seasons. You have the chance to undo that mistake and earn an advantage yourself, right?
Yeah.
And again, I keep coming back to the fact that all of those sending someone away are all solitary, whereas here it's just like, hey, go meet someone for an hour and then make a decision and go back to your camp.
Yeah. But
yeah,
anyway,
so no,
but
like we're burying the lead here. Like we were still talking about Marianne talking about her extra vote, right? Like why would you do this?
Yeah.
We saw Drea talk about it and say, hey, look, I have an extra vote. We should do an all girls alliance last week, and immediately Swati was like, should we take her out?
Should we take her
out because she has too much power?
So
Marianne's
my
doing the
mindset,
same thing.
My mindset with this type of thing is that in the earlier seasons, not exactly earlier seasons, but like 20s, early 30s, people would kind of use idols and advantages that they got to gain trust with other people. And that's something that makes sense. But in this day and age, you cannot do that because someone will turn around and backstab you for it. Where older seasons, alliances were pretty much set in stone. And if you went against your alliance, you were immediately singled out and ridiculed, and you had no chance of winning. Think of Cochran in South Pacific. You know, the guy was bullied the whole season, turned on his tribe. They treated him like crap the rest of the season. Where now, ever since the idea of like voting blocks came in, where basically you vote with people that you have a common interest with, and then you kind of go your separate ways, or you just have a civil agreement with them, and then you have the groups that are like closer. But now it's a lot less taboo for someone to turn on their tribe. So I think trying to build trust with people or just showing them the advantages you have in the game is so much riskier now.
Yeah, I get it. I don't hate the idea of using an advantage to sway the numbers, to wiggle your way into an alliance you may not already have any standing in. But you're right in that the game is so fast and crazy and wild from like the day they hit the beach. These seasons nowadays, that people not necessarily have firm alliances, but already having conversations and making soft alliances, I'll call them, with a lot of people. So that if you tell someone you have an advantage, you have some extra power, it's not like, oh, cool, it's us versus them. I want to work with you, so we're stronger. It's like, well, we're all still kind of fluid. The only person who's an outsider is the person who has the advantage. That's you. We're going to take you out. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to work with anyone else in this beat.
People in more recent seasons can recognize when someone is a threat now, as opposed to older seasons where they wouldn't recognize if someone was a threat because they were in their alliance. They just choose to ignore it. Just think, I keep on going back to older seasons as examples, but just think of Redemption Island with Boston Rob. Everyone knew he was a threat, but everyone refused to turn on anyone.
Because, which is, as we've talked about, like that kind of gameplay, like power to the people who made it work. Kim won world.
Power to someone power to Boston Rob, power to Kim, power to those people for being in charge of everything. Everyone else, what are you doing?
Yeah, and look, I think it all changed the first time Tony played and won.
Yeah,
he used the terminology. He called it the meat shield, and that you don't want to be the king of the castle and have everyone get in line to serve you, because players right now don't want to just have the numbers anymore. They realize like if I'm not, something flipped at a certain point where a bunch of players realized, hey, I'm in the power alliance of 6 out of 9 people, but I don't want to just ride around and finish 5th. Like that's what does that benefit me? And eventually something changed where I'm glad that you want to have power, but you don't want everyone to know you have power, or you at least want to have someone else who will be a target in front of you. So I'm glad that aspect of the game has changed. And again, relating back to the advantages here, it's unfortunate that having an advantage immediately puts a target on your back and you can't use it to kind of benefit your standing in the game, or change alliances or pull someone on the other side over to your side. But people are just so leary right now
Yeah.
of an
Well,
advantage
and
because if
so
you don't have it, think
think
about how
about it,
helpless you feel.
they're still what, 7, 8, 9 days in? Like they're only 3 episodes in. I looked at
Yeah.
my camera like I was holding two fingers there. Um, but like they don't know each other at all, especially with the way that this season and 41 was laid out because they're 13 days shorter. Tribals are every 2 days when they're the separate tribes instead of three like normal. It's so much more fast paced. You don't get as much time to get to know everyone. And, I don't blame them for being so leery of each other just because of how fast paced everything is.
Yeah, and we kind of saw this last season, and I don't know if that'll be the case again this time. But like, remember the Ua tribe got picked off one by one by one,
Yeah.
and there was never a tribe swap. There was never a reshuffling of things. They didn't go from 3 tribes to 2. So maybe just in the reduced time, you mentioned there are 26 days now, 13 days less than in the past. Maybe they say, look, let's just ride it out with the tribes we have, get to the merge, and then the game will be on from there.
I would also argue that the no tribe swap thing may have something to do with COVID guidelines.
I can't imagine because everyone is in quarantine beforehand.
And I got that, but it was just kind of like when I realized last season, you brought it up a while ago how they never swapped it all. I just had like the thought of, oh, maybe it had something to do with that. Because
I'm actually more wondering if it has something to do with the Beware advantage. They don't want multiple people on the same tribe having it.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because also if you find 2 Beware advantages, you have 2 phrases you have to say.
Well, not 2. I see. You're taking it a step farther. I didn't mean one person has 2. I meant 2 people in one tribe have 2.
Okay, that also makes sense too.
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty good segue though, because Marianne found it. She found the one for Vati. I'm getting better.
A little bit.
But yeah, she found it in front of Omar, which again, we just went over this, but still, what are you doing? Especially something like that.
I'm just sitting there screaming at my television, like, what are you doing? Stop it.
Like, I get she found it accidentally, but try and be secretive. Don't immediately be like, oh my God, I found an idol. And when everyone just comes running, they're like, okay, cool, she has an idol. We'll take her out now. Like,
but interestingly enough, we don't have anyone on her tribe, at least not what we saw on camera, thinking way ahead, like we saw Daniel when Mike found it, which, by the way, we got to talk about that again real quick. Daniel trying to like basically steal the advantage from Mike and getting called out. That was crazy.
That was one of the weirder
like he lost it again.
That was one of the weirder things I've seen in this show because he might be, for some reason, he just was like, yeah, I need your idol. I just need to see it because I'm paranoid. And he did a terrible job of covering for himself.
He wasn't paranoid. He was trying to read all the fine print on the letter.
And I know, but he worded it to Mike that he was paranoid and he just wanted to read all the fine print. Where in reality, he just wanted to see everything so they could understand just how they had to go ahead with it.
Right.
Because him and Chanel are trying to basically take that power away from Mike, and Mike.
And the one thing that he read that he didn't, I guess, know last week, which kind of limits his plan, is that, hey, once we all make it to the merge, the lack of a vote goes away. So
and
he can only control Mike,
and it becomes an idol. That's the one thing, and I think it was different. I think it's different for this season than it was last season, where once they get to the merge with the idol, it becomes a full-fledged idol no matter what.
Oh, okay. So I actually missed that. If that's the case. That's interesting.
So the only real reason to say the phrases would be if you need it before, if you want to activate it beforehand. Well, which for me, there's
vote, right? It's not so much about the immunity; it's the power to vote.
Yeah, I forgot about
so
that.
It's a dual-edged sword there. But no, you mentioned. So I got distracted. I was saying no one on Marianne's tribe tried to pull the same thing that Daniel did in trying to control her. Although, did she tell anyone she had it? I know
She
they were
told
all looking
Omar.
for it, and she kind of said it out loud, but I don't think it was ever clear if she told everyone.
I
And
don't
even
think she
her
told
own.
everyone, no.
Okay.
But at the
So
same
then
time,
she randomly says it
the
at
four
the
of them seem
challenge,
so
and
close that I wouldn't be surprised if she had told everyone. Um, but yeah, she just randomly said her phrase at the challenge, and then Mike didn't say his, which I thought was interesting because he was supposedly waiting for the other tribe to say, their phrase. But
which I actually kind of like, because if he's
yeah,
going to say something and put his ass on the line, he doesn't want to actually do it unless he has full assurance that when he opens his mouth, he gains himself back the power to vote plus an immunity now.
well,
Although it
and
could
you
be the
think
same
about it
situations
too.
we saw in 41 where the third tribe also has it, and by him not saying it, he's just keeping everyone from getting their
Yeah,
immunities.
well, and you think about it too. Like, if he immediately just said something weird right after Marianne said something weird, that would put a target on him right off the bat.
Yep.
Just like how last season it put Xander had a target on him in the beginning, and then everyone just kind of thought, yeah, he's a freaking weirdo. But then towards the end, once Xander and Shan and Nasir said their lines, everyone just kind of was like, okay, that can't be that can't be, a coincidence.
But then they merge like a week, like the next episode. So
yeah.
So then immediately now there was 3 idols in play.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so let's get to the challenge, because it's crazy. There's really not much to say other than Jonathan beat the ocean.
Jonathan fought the ocean, the entire ocean,
and won. One thing my father always told me growing up when we go to the beach, you like get all stern and be like, no man is bigger than the ocean. I don't know if that's his line or he was quoting my grandfather or whatever, right? But the whole thing is, no man's bigger than the ocean. Essentially, like, you get caught in a riptide, I don't care how good a swimmer you are, you're going to die or whatever, right? Like, Jonathan beat the ocean. I'm speechless.
That was one of the cooler things you've seen, because there's been a lot of feats of physical strength on this show, but we've never really seen anything like that, especially when Jeff had to make history basically by letting the other 2 tribes forfeit part of a challenge because the ocean was so rough, and it wasn't any fault of them. It was solely the weather that day.
Yeah, and he said it wasn't for lack of effort.
Yeah,
and I think what helped his decision is the fact that they were both at about the same spot, so no one had an advantage of the other. So like, if you wipe the slate clean and say, all right, go to the next stage, if some person was 10-15% ahead of the other team, then that's a disadvantage to them if they lose whatever lead they had. Here they were kind of just flopping around in the ocean and trying to survive at that point.
Yeah, and it was a lot less of trying to actually put their ladder up and get the key than it was basically stay there. Like, we saw a lot of clips of, I think it was Chanel was holding on for dear life onto the pole. Yeah. Roxroy was like yelling for help because he couldn't get above the water. Like, it was dangerous. It was to the point where it was legitimately dangerous.
Yeah, and you obviously you can't put these people's lives at risk outside of what the game already presents.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so it was a pretty clear-cut victory, at least for Taku.
Yeah.
Because Jonathan, not only did he just dominate the ocean and the water part of the challenge, but then he basically finished the rest of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the strongest individual performances in a team challenge I think we've ever seen. And poor Jonathan, though, to his sake, he was the first pick on our fantasy draft. You nailed him right away.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big, strong guy, but also has an awesome social game. And Jeff threw his ass under the bus. And he made sure he pointed out how good of an individual performance it was.
Yeah.
And as good as that is and how much praise and attention you want, you never want people.
Big old bullseye on his back now.
Hey, look at this guy.
Yeah.
He's the threat. Jeez.
Yeah. And, I remember I said to my mother after we watched that, I was like, man, Jonathan is different than the other kind of classic musclehead guys that you see on the show, where every season it seems there's your stereotypical ripped guy. But a lot of the times they either have no social game or they have an ego the size of the moon, or, there's something that kind of negates their strength and challenges. Where with Jonathan, it doesn't really seem like he has that type of Achilles heel. He has a very good social game, like you said. He's very good in challenges, and he has a really good relationship with everyone.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping that they don't just immediately get to the merge and be like, well, this guy can't win. Let's just take him out now.
Yeah.
Especially because a lot of people have already told like a really good story for why they deserve to win, things they had to go through. Like Mariah obviously had a really good story, which is not going to matter now. I think Zach first out had a pretty good story. I feel like they make sure that they cast people who aren't just, hey, here's some random guy from the cornfield in Iowa. Like, without any, like, they're not hiring that person anymore. So
yeah, they used to, but now they want someone that people are going to like emotionally connect with.
Yeah,
and that's why we have a lot more trouble kind of like picking who we want to win. Like, there's a difference for how you and I at the beginning of both seasons we've covered where we've picked someone to win based solely on like our impression of them, but there's a difference between that and wanting someone to win, because there's so many, we understand everyone like a different way now because the show has done a lot better of giving everyone their own type of like character arc.
Right.
Whereas in the earlier seasons you'd have your like 5 to 7 people who would all end up being the ones in the final 5 to 7, and the entire rest of the cast would just be voted out. And because of the first 8 or so episodes were just basically filler, just letting you get to know the first, the people that you actually had.
Someone got eliminated. They didn't have a story. You didn't really know much about them. Like, oh, cool, that person went home. That's one less person who's in the game. Like, you didn't know anything about him. So
yeah,
their elimination was just cannon fodder at that point.
Exactly.
Yep.
But yeah, I think basically after the challenge, there's really not much to discuss other than Tribal.
Well, let's part of what's important to Tribal. We do got to talk about Chanel and was it Omar who went on the adventure to what we're calling Shipwheel Island. And I still can't understand, because Chanel made a point of saying multiple times, I'm going to Tribal tonight. I cannot
risk being at a disadvantage. And she said that to his face, and because of that, he used that to his advantage, saying, yeah, I don't think she's going to risk her vote here.
Yeah, but one thing I didn't understand about her gameplay is that she both said, I don't want to do anything that risks or endangers my vote, but I still want to do something that gives both of us an advantage coming out of here. And I'm sitting at home thinking, like,
you can only have one of those.
It's literally impossible.
Yeah.
It's either you both get nothing, or one of you gets the other person. Right.
Yeah. There's 3 possible outcomes here. It's one of you gets nothing. One of you gets something. You both get nothing and you get a vote taken away, or you both get nothing and you just walk out of there like nothing happened.
Right.
And she took the worst possible option.
Yeah. I don't know if she was just thinking, like, because I thought it was pretty clear. Maybe it's just the way they edited it, but it seemed like it was pretty clear that Omar was going to risk it. She was telling him to risk it. But when she got up to the wheel to make the decision, she's like, you know what? I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to let me get an advantage. And I'm sitting there like, no, I think she actually went second. So we already knew. But
she knew she was going into Tribal, and that there'd be some, she was about to do something that might affect that. Mm-hmm. So then the second she walks down there and sees risk your vote or protect your vote, if you know that this is going to be a big Tribal for your tribe, you cannot risk your vote. No matter what.
You don't have the numbers. Like, if you firmly have the numbers, and
it's fine.
Obviously, one person flipping.
But the thing is, she didn't know. She had no idea what was going on because she wasn't there. She didn't realize that she'd be the pivotal vote. She had no idea.
But part of that's her own social game too, in not being aware of the pre-existing relationships on her tribe. Like, she had to have at least had some idea of where people were standing.
Yeah.
Up to that point, right? And where the vote may have gone. Like, if she came back and were like, "Oh, we're going to vote at Mike," and I'd be like, "Huh, that's different." But I'm on board. Maybe that would have been the case. But I think generally, like, if you would ask her as she was on the boat leaving, "Hey, who do you think is going to be on the chop block tonight?" I bet she would have said Lydia and Jenny.
Yeah. It's
And
not like
then
it wasn't
you could do the math with who's voting for who.
yeah. Well, and the thing is, they also, not everyone knew that Mike didn't have a vote either. I don't think Hai and Lydia
Well,
knew.
she knew. She knew.
Chanel knew,
Yeah.
but I don't think Hai and Lydia did.
But I think that's even worse for her, knowing that one person in her alliance could not vote.
Yeah.
How? How do you risk a second vote being taken away?
Yeah.
You guys having no chance at tribal.
Yeah,
So.
I don't. You know, you could go over the scenario so many times. I don't think I'd understand it.
No,
Like, there's just no reason to risk your vote, especially when, like you said, especially when your alliance is already down one vote, and there's a chance for, there's a tiny little chance that maybe you'll get an advantage out of it. But even then, like, you have to play, especially in this season where it's so fast paced, you have to play in the moment. And in that moment, there's a chance that if she risked her vote and wouldn't be able to vote, her entire game could blow up. If this was a different scenario,
which it still might.
I legitimately think if Mike could vote and she risked her vote, no problem with that. They'd still be at a 3-2 advantage. But she went into that with the 4 of them being at a 3-2 advantage.
Right. Yeah, at which, look, let's just roll right into actually what happened, right? You have Mike and Chanel both not able to vote.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting at home a week ago again through who we have in our preseason drafts, but Jenny, Hai, and Lydia, all 3 of them on my team. And I'm thinking, like, well, I have to lose someone. And I did, but I was sweating out Hai because he's my pick to win the whole thing, right? And when they're like, oh, they're going to go for Lydia, it's like, I can live with that. Okay, I can live with it. It's not my winner. It is someone on my team. It is someone whose stock is rising.
Yeah.
I can live with it. But yes, you have 4 people only able to vote. And just the look on everyone's face. I think was it Hai who said it the first time or the second time?
Second time. When there was 2 votes and there should have been 4.
Right. Okay. So the first time they get back, Jeff reads the 4th vote and he's like, we're tied 2-2, no more votes.
Yeah.
And everyone's like,
everyone was just confused.
What in what world? I do love though Mike's reaction. Every time he went up to vote, he saw that thing. It's like you went on the vote. He was just like,
yeah,
it's a genuine reaction. But yeah, I can't recall a time where we've seen 2 ties and they had to go to rocks, necessitated by people not being able to vote. Now there's been a deadlock in, what was it, Millennials versus Gen X, I believe.
Yeah, there was.
When Jess got eliminated on rocks,
and in Blood versus Water 1. There was there was rocks, but
that's when you just have like 6 versus 6.
Yeah, exactly.
Just there was 2 hard-headed groups. No one's willing to budge.
Where this one was, it was literally just no one willing to budge because there was only basically 4 people that it could boil down to, where it pretty much went between Hai and Daniel.
And I think what the crazier part about it too is because Jeff made it very clear at the end that you guys have to make a unanimous decision. We're going to rocks. Yeah. And I think what helped that case for them to make a decision and ultimately end up selecting Jenny to be voted out is because Chanel and Mike were 2 of those 4 people who needed to make a decision. But because they didn't have a vote, Jeff said they could influence the decision, but they couldn't actually make a decision themselves. They still had no power.
Yeah.
So reality came to Hai versus Daniel saying, hey, who do we want to vote out? And I think they were both defiantly on the board of, I want my person to go, or I want the person on my side to be safe. I want the other person to go home. But also, Daniel did not want to go to rocks at all, and Hai was willing to. So like that's kind of where the
you said before this, though, before we started recording, that Hai might have been bluffing. And the more I think about it, the more I think either way, saying I'm willing to go to rocks gives you all the leverage in the world in that type of situation.
What a power play. Yeah, because Jeff even asked him first. Like he got to say the name first, and he's like, well, you don't vote for me? My decision's made. We can go to rocks. Yeah. I'm cool with it. Go ahead.
Especially if the other person says, yeah, I really don't want to go to rocks, which is what he led with. Daniel immediately went, yeah, I really don't want to go to rocks. So all Hai has to do is say, you know what? I can go to rocks. And then all of a sudden that gives him all the power because he's the
Right.
one that is going to be necessitating the negotiation. I cannot talk. Where he basically is just telling Daniel, yeah, if you don't vote with me, we're going to Rocks. And if Daniel's the guy that doesn't want to go to Rocks, what choice does he have?
He forced his hand to vote
Yeah,
out someone he didn't
exactly.
want to, because it was either I vote out someone who I may want to keep around, or I risk my own
My
self being
entire
eliminated.
game. Yeah.
And it's a no-brainer. Like, good if Hai was,
Oh yeah.
like if Hai was actually willing to go to Rocks and like did not care, was willing to take the risks, like he could have blown up in his face,
Yeah.
or he could have gotten away with it, and it would have been like a gigantic play. But the fact that if he was bluffing, the fact that he forced that on Daniel was one of the best moves I think I've seen in a while on this show.
Definitely, probably the best move of this season.
Yeah,
in a
Daniel
while,
for sure did not want to be the one who got eliminated. I certainly wouldn't. I can't imagine anyone in that situation. Like, you protect yourself.
You pour one out for Jenny just because if you get voted out just normally, where you see, say it's like a 4-1 vote, you understand unanimous vote, it's fine. But in that type of situation where if you're picked over someone else, where they're just like, yeah, we are gonna shoot. We want both you and Lydia gone, but I guess we'll take Lydia over you. That's so demoralizing. Like, that's such an embarrassing way to go out, and it's through no fault of her own either.
Right.
Like, I don't.
Other than maybe she could have, if she flipped her, but well, she had already voted for Lydia, right? So there was nothing she could have done.
Yeah, if she voted
for anyone other than Lydia, she would have had the majority of votes on her right from the get go. It would have been a 2-1-1 vote, and that would have been it.
Yeah.
You're right. So Jenny literally did nothing wrong.
No, she didn't do anything wrong. She was on the right side of the votes too. It was just Chanel's dumb decision to risk her vote that put her on the wrong side. Because Chanel would have voted for Lydia if she had been able to vote.
I think so. She was. We got to talk about it too. That whole her whispering to Daniel and Daniel being like, "Oh, I had a game plan, but also I showed up here and just whatever you told me to do, I was going to do." It's like, I don't know.
That whole exchange between him and Chanel was very odd because he was trying to kind of pass the blame off onto Chanel, and Chanel was defending herself by saying she had never told him anything, but she had, which was the problem.
No, we clearly saw her whisper it, and Hai actually even saw it too. She said, like, vote for Lydia, and Hai looked right at her. So like,
she said to him, vote for Lydia, and she was trying to cover herself when he called her out for it.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing so, it made them both look bad because it made her look like she could not be trusted at all, and she's just sacrificing someone to save herself. And then for Daniel, it just looks like he's trying to pass the blame off on someone else and look bad because this tribal did not help Daniel's stock at all.
No, it really didn't help a lot of people who are unfortunately on
I would say the only person it helped was Hai.
Yeah, I think he kept his ally in the game.
Yeah,
he showed that he's not going to back down, but he's still not. I wouldn't say a threat by any means.
I wouldn't say he's a threat, but he's a bigger threat than, Lydia at this point, just because he was in that position of power. He's not in the majority alliance on his tribe because they're still outnumbered. Actually, no, technically it's 2-2 now.
Well, there's 5 of them left.
There's 5, but Mike still doesn't have a vote.
But Mike still can't vote, right?
Yeah.
Right, so if they go back to tribal, we could just see a repeat scenario.
Exactly. Which, that'd be wild if that happened.
Yeah, and of course, if Taku goes to tribal next week, Omar can't vote. So again, you have another 2-2 chance there.
I forgot about that, yeah. Marianne can't vote either.
That's wild. So he can't vote just
Jonathan
one time. Wow, that's crazy. So... Wait, they have 5 people left, right?
They have 4. They voted out Mariah and then Jackson.
They do have 4, right? Oh wow! So only 2 people.
Only 2 people could vote.
So yeah, how does that work? They can only vote for each other. It ends in a tie.
No, they wouldn't. It's not that they wouldn't be able to vote for each other. All four people would still go up there. There would just be two votes.
Right, but they could own. Oh, I guess they could technically.
They could vote for Omar, or they could vote for Marianne.
Yeah, you're right. I'm thinking like they're just going to vote for each other, and then they're going to cancel out. And there's a revote. No,
this isn't like a final three scenario right here.
Right, they could both just say, "Hey, you know what? We're going to vote on Marianne," and that could be the end of it. You're right.
Yeah,
but that would be crazy too. You have 2 straight weeks where only 2 people make like the final decision. Mm-hmm. We haven't had a single normal elimination this whole season. Even the first 2, we saw our first ever unanimous votes. Like Survivor's never seen a unanimous vote up until episodes 1 and 2 because people didn't lose their vote. And even if everyone else on the tribe voted for you, you still had a vote.
And you're not going to vote for yourself.
You can't. You literally can't.
You physically can't vote for yourself.
I don't think you're allowed to, no.
I didn't know that. I just figured it was something that obviously was.
Because if you were going to, I think you would just pull yourself from the game.
Yeah, I guess.
Why go through the charade, right?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. Either way, like I don't think we'd ever get to the point where we saw someone voting for themselves.
No.
If it got to the point where everyone was voting and then that person just went, "Yeah, I'm just going to vote for myself." Like, what are you doing?
Right. Like even in Fans versus Favorites 2, when they had the impromptu tribal and Brandon went home, he like I forget who he screamed. He defiantly screamed someone else's name.
Philip.
It was Philip Shepherd. Yeah.
Philip Shepherd. Yeah. So
even then, like he knew he was going home. He was all fired up, ready to like punch a hole through something. But he still said someone else's names. Like I don't even think if he could have said his names, like "Get me the hell out of here," he would have said his name. But like he did hate Philip too. Him and a lot of people who played this game before him. Oh,
I mean, can you blame him?
No.
Never thought we'd get off on a tangent and bring up Philip Shepherd in this pod, but here we are.
Well, until someone pops out bright pink underwear again. And then there's your
I think right now, if they ever do like a Survivor duos type of thing, we should go on there and we should have matching bright pink tidy whities as an homage to Philip Shepherd. What do you say?
Can I say no to that?
Fine, I guess so.
All right, yeah. So let's wrap this up though. Like, where do we see everything going?
I don't know.
Over the next few weeks, because
I really don't know.
Taku goes to tribal, only 2 people can vote. If they come back again next week, we're probably going to get another 2-2 split.
Yeah.
For Vati, I mean.
And the thing is right now is that all 3 of them physically are very evenly matched, which is what gives me hesitation about even kind of predicting who's going to win the next challenges. Because it's not like last season where we basically saw Ua just get picked off one by one by one. Each tribe, we're 3 episodes in, we've had 3 immunity challenges, and each tribe has lost one. The only reason Taku has 2 people down is because of Jackson's
elimination.
Yeah. We're 3 immunity challenges, 3 different tribes have lost. That's about as
means everyone's also had to forfeit their flint at one point and gotten it back. Well,
yeah,
I guess Vati hasn't gotten theirs back because they just lost it.
Yeah,
but it's going to be crazy, and I don't remember them teasing anything all that wild for this upcoming episode. Is there anything I'm missing?
From what I remember, I don't remember it either. Nothing really stood out to me. It just seemed like there was a lot of conflict between everyone.
Yeah, and one thing
that could just be manufactured, because one thing the show is very good at is taking clips of other people talking out of context and making it look like they're
it's all smoke screen.
Yeah,
like they made it look like last week like Drea was in a lot of trouble, and then they didn't even go to tribal council.
The entire Blue Tribe didn't have any screen time this episode. Right.
So who knows? And they made it seem like Mike actually lost his idol a second time.
Yeah, where he did.
Physically didn't have it.
Technically he did. It just was at the fault of someone else.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah, but
they're pretty good at driving us off the scent at this point. So basically, what if you see something in the trailer other than Jeff definitively saying like drop your buffs, whatever you see is probably not what you. It's not going to happen.
It's going to happen, but just not in that way.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's a good spot to wrap up because we covered everything. But you have anything else to say?
I'm good for this week.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. One of those days in the future after episode 4. But yeah, for now, see everyone later.